What would you go back in time and tell yourself? This is something you didn't know at the time, something unexpected perhaps that you're like, I wish I knew that when I stepped into this role. Not about the company, it's just really about the role itself. What comes to mind?
I came in at a really interesting time because a month or so after I started, COVID happened, March of 2020, and and we shut the office down. So I think that was certainly like an extreme. But coming into any role, especially a CFO role, I think you need to expect the unexpected and really embrace it and appreciate it because it's a huge part of the journey, and it's what makes you successful. Like how you deal with when the unexpected happens. Like how do you behave? How do you function? Are you freaking out? Are you calm and just able to think clearly and figure the problem out? Nobody really ever told me anything along those lines, like, oh, something's going to blow up and you're going to have to figure out how to fix it. And it really is just part of like the day to day of the journey. And it certainly makes for good stories in the long run. But expecting the unexpected, that's certainly something that I think every finance person or every person that's going into a CFO role needs to be able to grasp, because a lot of finance folks, by their nature, they're big planners, right? So when a plan doesn't go according to the way that you want it to, it can be really frustrating, and you need to figure out what are the alternatives to getting that plan to continue to move along in the direction that's healthy for the business, but not necessarily the original kind of goal or area that you set out to it. Let me give you a tale of two different CFOs that I've worked with in the past, and one that I think was very successful and did a fantastic job, and another one that I think they're kind of tapped out at a certain point, and you'll see why in a second here. So the first, I talk about living outside the spreadsheet. The first CFO that I'm thinking of, he grew up in the public accounting world. Came into the business as a controller and kind of graduated to being a CFO. Really, really common for a lot of companies. One thing that significantly limited his ability to scale and to grow and to think strategically was, two things. One was living in the spreadsheet all the time. Everything was always about the numbers, which you're a CFO, you're a finance person. Like that obviously is what you need to know and care about. But because of that, he sort of became paralyzed, but analysis paralysis just kind of set in with how he thought about the world, and wasn't able to scale, himself. Being at a business that is growing 50, 80, 100% a year, you have to scale yourself with the company every year as the business grows, or the business will outgrow you, and you'll be looking for another job at some point. So living in the spreadsheet too long, just caring about the numbers and not the human side of things, that was a big problem, and ultimately kind of caught up with them. And it's just, you just don't know these things, right? So that's why I say, like, studying other leaders that you've worked with in the past is really important. And you can't study somebody for 10 minutes. It's like learning a language. Like, you got to study them every day and then reflect, okay, what did I learn? The second CFO, very successful. How is he different? He also grew up in the public accounting world. And I wanted to use two people from the public accounting world because I think you can automatically say, okay, accountants are all the same. Well, no, they're not all the same. So this particular CFO, I worked with at my last company, building engines, and he was a great person to learn from. He knew the numbers well, and he knew what was going on in the finance world, but he didn't spend every single second of his time in the spreadsheets. He spent time understanding what was going on in the business, and the most important thing that I took away from that was his ability to be able to boil things down and explain them to other counterparts in the business. If there was an issue, he could very, very easily explain it, and not necessarily relate it back to the numbers, but relate it back to why it was such a problem. And at the end of the day, the numbers are really important, but it's about, like, what is fundamentally happening in the business and what needs to change to make the business successful. And he was really good at understanding what was happening and rallying people and explaining to them how we would be able to change it.
But the final question that we have for you, Luigi, is looking forward the next 12 months, what are your finance leader priorities as you look forward?
Yeah, finance leader priorities. I'm thinking about 2023, and then how do things change in 2024? And I think 2024 is going to be more of the same as far as the economy and just generally what the business environment is. So there's not a CFO in the world that's out there today that hasn't been asked to do more with less, or reduce the burn, reduce the cost structure of the business. Um, and we're gonna be in the same position for the next, call it 12 months here. So my priorities are really going to be about continuing to grow the business in a healthy way, but also drive towards improving efficiency across the board on an ongoing basis. How do I get more efficient? How does my go-to-market function, sell quicker? How do they sell, for less dollars? Um, that's really the big priority. We want to continue to grow the business. We've been very successful and fortunate to bring it as far as we have, and we look forward to a very bright future. But now we're in the year of becoming a true durable growth business, which efficiency is really the key part of that recipe, but also growing at a healthy rate is the other piece of it. Doesn't need to be like, three times. It needs to be 30, 40, 50, 60% a year. So that's what we're focused on is durable growth in developing that part as our business.
Luigi Testa, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you, Jack. It's been a pleasure.